Okay, a very warm welcome to everybody this morning. This is a webinar obviously all about the newest technical update from SolarWinds 2020.2. Just a brief introduction. I hope you can all see the screen there, the first slide. So I'm going to move quickly on. We've got joining us today myself. I'm Matt Crane, Director of Sales and Marketing at Prosperon Networks. And I've also got our senior monitoring engineer, Rob Kavanagh, who's joined us. Rob, hopefully you can say hello.
Hello there, everyone. Thanks for joining.
So just before we get started, a few slides just for those that are new to us as an introduction to Prosperon. On the top of the slide there, you'll see some links. We've got blog links and LinkedIn, Twitter and YouTube links. One of the common questions we get asked is whether we record these webinars. Yes, of course we do. And at some point in the next couple of days, this webinar will be posted up to our YouTube channel, which you can see the link there, the fourth one. So I want to get started today. Thank you very much for joining. I think the last time we all gathered, we were in the midst of a lockdown. I'm glad to say that's now easing off, obviously, and we obviously hope that you all managed to stay safe and well through that period. So let's move on. We've got the agenda coming up today. I'm going to do a very quick thank the Lord pitch on Prosperon, and just for those again that are new to us to get a good flavour of what we're all about. Then we'll talk very quickly some of the main features within the 2020.2 release. Rob and I will then be talking about the maps. Specifically in this session, we're focusing in on maps. We have another webinar coming up, which I'll talk to you a bit later on about, which is all about dashboards. But this one is really focusing on the improvements to the mapping, which is a great new feature.
And then Rob will be a big favourite.
Yeah, I think so too, Rob. We're very much looking forward to the next one, which is your live demonstration, where you're going to show us the look and feel of those new maps. So that's going to be a nice thing to do some diving into. At the end of the session, question and answers as usual. Please, guys, you'll see in your control panel an area where you can ask questions. We love questions. They bring about all sorts of different conversations that we can have. So please use those. Also, there's a chat window in there where you can ask questions if you're having any issues hearing any of us or anything like that, or want to ask a question directly. Do that. That's absolutely fine. Those of you who've joined us before on these webinars will know that we love to do polls to keep you guys interested, to get some valuable feedback from you. And we've got, I think, 3 of these today centered in and around this particular topic. So look out for those. You'll see some responses to the polls as a general, so you can get the results of those too.
I think we'll get some interesting answers out of those. Yeah,
I do. Well, hopefully they will engage, Rob. That'd be great. So, very quickly, a little bit about us. Prosperon Networks formed in 2006. This is now thereabouts our 15 years. We partnered with SolarWinds right at the get-go. And we've seen a lot, obviously, of changes as some of you guys have been using the tools that long. So we're all about, making people's experiences of the Orion platform much better, and we provide lots of different accompanying services to do that. And at a quick glance on this slide, you'll see some of the things that we're most proud of. Obviously, we're doing a lot of days on site, remote working. We're handling a lot of your support cases these days. Some of you have obviously been using us all the time for raising tickets. We're very proud of the fact, I think it's 85, 90% of the tickets that are raised with us, we resolve without any vendor assistance. And that very often means for you guys a quicker resolving of those cases. All of our engineers, Rob is one of these guys, all of them are SCP accredited. Those that aren't familiar with SCP, that's the SolarWinds Certified Professional Accreditation. Our engineers obviously have got that, passed that, and some of them have also gone on and got the Technical Excellence Awards. I think Rob is one of the engineers that we have, which is a security cleared engineer, so he can work on those very sensitive sites.
That's right.
We're also a couple of our guys are THWAC MVPs. I think most of you know what THWAC is, which is the SolarWinds community. We are very proud to have a couple of our guys here as MVP, where they contribute and get involved in a lot of the discussions that are held internally at SolarWinds in terms of product direction.
And they don't hand those out lightly.
Absolutely. So professional services, a big part of our organisation is improving existing platforms, and also making sure that when people's first journey starts with SolarWinds, that those deployments are as good as they can possibly be, i.e. delivering from the get-go. So we've got a different number of things that we focus on in our services portfolio. Consultancy, which essentially means, making improvements to existing platforms, as we mentioned. Implementation, making sure that project-driven deployments are delivered to your satisfaction. Another area we have is obviously making sure that we integrate into some of your other key tools. They could be service desk tools, they could be other monitoring tools. We're blessed, obviously, as many tools are these days, to have an open API from SolarWinds, and we can dig deep into that and make sure that we can make that experience between using your tool sets a much richer one. So following that, we've got training courses. We deliver a lot of different styles of training these days. We have administration type courses. We have knowledge transfer type courses. We even have user profile type training. So it may not be that everybody needs to sort of dig deep and know the guts of SolarWinds, the Orion platform, but just know how to use it. People on NOC teams, or even management people that need to know how to navigate through. I mentioned at the beginning of support, we have a dedicated support desk here to manage our customer support tickets. And health checks I'll speak on a little bit more in a couple of moments. This is where we take a good baseline of the status of your platforms as they are today. Obviously, we do a lot of work within upgrading platforms. One of the actual features of 2020.2 is SolarWinds making that upgrade step far easier than it had been in the past, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a few moments' time. So, moving on quickly, pre-upgrade report. This is my slide. I love this slide. We put it in there because I think one of the most critical times to get that baseline of where you all are at today with Orion is maybe just as you're just about to upgrade it to a major release. I see no benefit in carrying on as you normally are if you're already in a place which could be made better. So one of the things the health check tries to provide is a review of the platforms, and Rob used to do these a lot in one of his previous roles with us. Just getting that understanding of where that platform sits today. Is it on a stable platform? Is it got the right sort of configuration of alerting? Are you seeing too many false positives? Are you using the maps, something that we'll talk about today, to the greatest degree? So that health check service is all about giving you an understanding of where you're at today, but also us then having a further conversation as, like, where do you want to get to with this platform? Yeah. What does tomorrow look like? What does good look like? Where do you want to be in a couple of years' time? And maybe it's a situation that us as a partner can help you achieve those goals. So it might be, a good time now before some of you have upgraded possibly already, but some of you may not have done, just to put a fork in the sand, say, look, we need to know where we're at today before we do this particular upgrade. Can we come to you for review? Yes, of course you can. Those of you that are under maintenance with us, renew your SolarWinds platform renewals with us. You are able to do that without any charge. Some of you may not be, and we can have a discussion with you about providing that health check to you. So moving on.
We always find something, don't we, Matt?
Well, we always do, and they are actually always almost around improving mapping and improving alerting, Rob, what they always used to be. Would you agree that was the case?
Certainly, yeah. It's such a big feature that sometimes gets neglected, so it's only natural it comes up in these health checks.
Cool. So I've got a screen here, guys, which shows you obviously all of the feature updates. Now, we decided to go back a few releases because it could be that some of you are still on 2018. Hopefully not too many are on 2017. We do find when we do health checks that we do see that some of you haven't yet upgraded to latest releases, and there could be a number of reasons why that is. Some of you like to wait a few months to obviously let any bugs that might be around in these new releases settle down. Some of you may not just have had the time or the resource to do it. So those in their full glory are the last 6 or 7 upgrades that have come out from SolarWinds. They're pretty regular. There are always around about these days 2 major releases per year. Obviously, we're focusing today on 2020.2. We've got there, obviously on the left, the newest, the most important features of this release. We actually have left out one, which I'll come to in a moment, and that is making that upgrade process much easier. So as you can see, Orion Map Improvements, that's something Rob is going to delve deeper with us this morning. We've also got improvements in the summaries and the dashboards. Don't want to talk too much about that this morning because we don't want to spoil the fun for the webinar that we've got on the 10th of September, which I'm hoping most of you will join. But we're going to touch on it quickly, and probably Rob and I will have a conversation with you guys. The next one down in our enhanced volume status. So this one is essentially what's been missing from Orion, or the Orion platform, up till now has been really any sort of sensible status of volumes. So volumes we see are pretty central to the health of a node, yet we've never been able to represent them in a meaningful way beyond up, green or present. So there are some fairly limited and not useful statuses for something critical to overall health of a server. So it's nice to know if a volume isn't attached or mounted, but I think with these enhanced volume status that SolarWinds have made, they really have improved that in quite a specific way. So it's good to see. I think that's come really from the community where that's been requested from them. So now obviously, go on, Rob, sorry.
I think it's a long time coming, really. I mean, you know, when I got into SolarWinds, looking at the volume status, I was always a bit blown away that, okay, I know the volume is up, but if it's 99% usage, why isn't the status showing me, you know, critical? Why isn't it showing me warning that's like to breach those thresholds? SolarWinds have taken that on board, you know, they've changed it. It's a lot better now. And the other thing that I really, really like, finally, we get customizable thresholds for those volumes as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's been a long time coming and badly needed. Good to see that one in this particular release. And I think they're going to continue down this route of improving this area. I don't see them stopping. So I think this is work in progress, guys. So that's really nice to see. So the other one moving forward, moving down a little bit, is the performance enhancements. So these are in 4 areas, mainly improving the legacy website, improving poorly performant resources, optimizing expensive queries, and a new Angular dashboard system. So the performance is all about, I mean, many of you will know, probably when you get to that cold start login page, if it's been left a while, it can seem like forever to get logged in, get the page displaying properly. Now, SolarWinds have improved that cold start. I should add that obviously it does depend on, you know, in terms of the browser that you're using and all that sort of stuff, and client machine specs and stuff like that. But what we're seeing, or what SolarWinds are saying, is that they have delivered a 96% improvement on that cold start page. Small things, obviously, but good to be able to sort of get the car warmed up quickly when you log into that page. So these are other things. That also reaches into the summary and node details pages, where they've improved by quite a substantial percentage the improvement of page loads and that sort of stuff. So that's a nice thing to have within this release. Being honest with you, third-party language pack support is not something that's a great area with my expertise. Rob, have you looked into that one at all a little bit, or not?
Well, I mean, we do have some international customers, so naturally that might have some interest to them. But you know the industry, a lot of English speakers, so nice to have, but something we probably won't see too much of. Absolutely.
So quickly, Rob, in terms of, we've always advised people before making upgrade steps on a few, obviously, action points that they need to do. So we've talked about, I know, some of the things in taking snapshots of the server and backups. Are these things still in play today? Do we need to still be doing these things with the new release and the new workflows for the upgrade?
I can't stress it enough, to be honest. I mean, the upgrade process has been improved a lot lately. You know, with the new centralized upgrade, it's a lot quicker, it's a lot easier, a lot more stable. But still, snapshot of the application server, back of the database, I can't stress it enough, really.
Yeah, and I think it goes without saying, every time we see an upgrade or new features from SolarWinds, is probably a pertinent time to make sure that the server platform that this is residing on is of the correct specification. Are there any big changes on that one, Rob, that we know about from 2020.2?
Well, you do need to go back and just make sure that the specs in terms of CPU and memory are up to scratch. And of course, that's all going to be on the release notes and specifications page for the product. But in terms of the very latest changes that SolarWinds have made, they listened to, let's say, concerns about what SQL database version was required, what Windows application server operating system was required, and they've made a lot of improvements. So nowadays, you're going to be allowed to use Windows Server 2012 again. Now, it was deprecated previously, but that's back. And you're going to be able to use earlier versions of Microsoft SQL for your database, for NPM and other modules. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, the latest would be required is 2012 for NTA. That's probably the latest version that you would need. Whereas for NPM solely, I think you can even go back all the way to 2008 SQL. So real improvements there.
Good stuff. In terms of the question that I always ask when new versions come out, in terms of obviously people that may be on 2018 or even earlier, what is the step process, Rob? Is it something that they can now still immediately move into 2020.2 from any version that they're on?
Yeah, and that's another thing. I think people probably remember, let's say, less than fondly when they're on versions such as 10 or 11, if we're going that far back, that we had to work out an upgrade matrix. So, you know, okay, I can upgrade this module to the next version, then I have to go to the other module and cross-reference that, and are these still compatible? All gone now. So you can just go up to, if you can get to 12 for NPM, or other later versions for other modules, it's going to be a straight upgrade process from that to the very latest versions. And in fact, another really neat thing they've done, they've got rid of the individual versions for different products. It's now just referred to as 2020.2. It's not going to be NPM 12.5, 12.6 or such and such. It's just the Orion platform. So a lot simpler these days.
Yeah, that's going to help a lot of folks who could have got wrapped up in different versions of different particular modules and stuff like that. So that's cool. Right, so guys, our next slide is a poll, our first poll. So please take the time to join in. What we've got here, this question on the poll is topically, which SolarWinds Orion platform are you on? Obviously, we can't do War and Peace on all of it, but what we've got there is some guidelines in terms of whether you're running the newest and best version, obviously the ones with 2020.2, or whether you're a little bit more behind, or whether you're absolutely lagging behind. So we're going to leave that just for a couple of seconds more to give you all time to register your votes on the poll. I'm seeing, Rob, can you see this too? I think the majority are on between 21.9.2 and 21.9.4. That's not a massive surprise to me.
We should have taken a bet beforehand. I'm not sure where my money would have gone. I think relatively up to date is sort of what we're expecting. I would have expected maybe a few more customers lagging behind, because, you know, these versions often do get installed and then maybe left. You know, people might lack a bit of confidence to take it up to the latest version. But it's good to see that there are a lot of people running later or very latest versions.
Good, excellent stuff. So obviously the reasons behind that, obviously maybe multiple of reasons. You may have decided to wait, as I said, right at the top, just to let the Googlies get out of the way, or it could be just a time factor. Obviously you're busy doing other things, and maybe the monitoring platform isn't the 100% focus, but then that's given us a good understanding of where everybody is at today. So very quickly, I don't want to spend too many times on slides because I want to get into this demo as quickly as possible. Rob, I talked about the improvements on the upgrade workflow. I'm not going to get too deep into it today, but it's fair to say that SolarWinds have made this a much easier process now in terms of there being some sort of framework to upgrading the platform. Is that right?
Absolutely. I can still remember the good old days where we'd be going into the customer portal, scouring through a list of software, trying to work out an upgrade matrix, trying to organize these upgrades. Whereas now, you've got this lovely updates and evaluations tab. It makes it so much simpler.
Yeah, I mean, that's a big improvement. Obviously, guys, we can't show you an upgrade. We're not brave enough to do that as a live thing. Some of you, obviously 20% plus of you have already done that. So hopefully that's been a good experience for you. And the rest of you guys know that has been made much easier as a process for you to do now in 2020.2. So that's something that we're really pleased about from SolarWinds, that they've made that difference. Again, I'm not going to dwell on this too much. The dashboard framework, about time. We love it. We think it's absolutely cool. But we do have a webinar specifically for this in early September. Essentially, grid-based layout, some new widget types. Good to see drag and drop placement with vertical and horizontal widget scaling. That's all providing you with a little bit more control with the layouts of your dashboards. And you can see I've just given you a nicer example directly from SolarWinds there. We're not going to give too much away, but that's a nice thing. Rob, anything to add on that? Have you had much time to play with the dashboard framework yet?
I have, and I've got to say, I'm really impressed, especially the scaling. I know it seems like such a small thing, but being able to have resources of different width and height, it's such an advantage. But don't worry, that's another thing I wanted to point out, guys. This isn't replacing, your traditional views, so it's going to work side by side.
Yeah, perfect stuff. Okay. So what we wanted to talk about today is the enhancement for the maps, and that's what this webinar topic is all about. Now, SolarWinds, you all know that SolarWinds, the platform, just collects so much data about your own environments. The data, though, is most times raw and unorganized, and it's not very useful to some of you in its current state. So many of the features obviously added to this version have actually been a little bit more inspired by your own requests and how you want to gain control over this data and give it a little bit more structure, and actually transforming that data into valuable information. So in terms of what we're going to discuss a bit later on in the live demo is the constructing and customizing of maps, the editing of these maps, and the features that are going to really help you take what used to be sort of complex tasks and making them a little bit more easy and display them in a way that's really easy to understand. So I've shown you a really nice one. It's not moving at the moment, obviously, but this is an example of a much improved map where we can overlay it with a lot more information, make it a little bit more personal to your own environments. So I'm going to leave that for Rob to get on and move on forward with. So very quickly another poll before we get into that live demo with Rob. How do you leverage the SolarWinds mapping tool? I said at the start that when we do health checks, we see some of you are using maps a great deal. A lot of you aren't using the maps at all. So we want to just get this one out there. Understand in terms of your, what the common consensus is just for the mapping side. Do you use it at high level only? Are you using it for sort of site campus kind of visuals, or maybe you're not using it at all? I don't know, but let's get that feel. So the answers coming in are actually quite an even one.
I was going to say, such an even spread there. I was really expecting it to be biased one way or another, but yeah, that's really across the field.
Okay, so again, hopefully, Rob, what we can show in the demo just coming up now is how, for some of those people that might want to have taken the opportunity to improve that mapping, how easy that can be and how much more improved that has been on previous versions. I think, Rob, it's my time to swap you over to a presenter. So I'm just going to do that, and hopefully it will go beautifully. So I swapped Rob. We should be able to see your screen as and when you're ready.
Excellent.
I can see
Okay.
that
Can everyone see that?
seamless. Okay, so I'm going to hand over to Rob. Rob, this is your chance to shine. Tell us a bit more about the improvements on the maps.
Cool. Thanks, Matt. So what you can see here is the Orion summary home for the SolarWinds online demo. I'm just going to be using a mix of that and our own lab environment to demonstrate this new mapping. And actually, something I want to point out here, just coming straight onto the page, what's the most eye-catching thing on the page? Well, it's the map. I mean, if I was just to scroll down a bit, immediately I'm going to start to lose interest when I start to look at these blocks of data. I mean, let's be honest, people don't want to just look at static tables, charts, lines of text. You know, it's not very interesting to them. Maps really spice up a page, really keep people's attention focused on something, and yeah, I really can't imagine the platform without them. They make your environment more real. I mean, looking at these nodes here, looking at this list, it's hard to actually picture these in any real sense, but seeing them laid out on a map, it's going to actually cement those in your mind. Okay, these are objects that exist in the real world. I've got to manage them effectively. I've got to take care of them. I've got to react when there are issues. Whereas if people see these big, long hierarchies of nodes, you know, perhaps unfamiliar to them, perhaps not very well spelled out topology-wise what they're doing, you're going to have maybe some issues where people don't take responsibility. Maps really make it so that people want to take ownership. They want to make sure things are healthy, want to keep the topology alive.
Have we ever seen a platform without maps? I mean, can we imagine that? I mean, that must be really tricky to sort of navigate through, right?
I really can't. I mean, it's such a crucial feature in SolarWinds. It's hard to imagine an environment that doesn't use them. Of course, you know, we see a lot of customers coming through us with professional services. Occasionally, we do find there are clients who don't make use of maps. It always makes me a bit sad because they provide such a great benefit. But you know, it's something that maybe people feel takes a bit too much time or too much effort, or it's you know, not going to provide a massive benefit. But believe me, it's all there. You know, you've got to make use of this feature.
Yeah. But it's not, I mean, when we think of maps, well, specifically when I think of maps, I always think about physical locations, but it's not just physical locations that some of the users out that they want to see. They don't want to see just public campus points on a campus map. What else can we show them that's not a physical map?
Yeah, I mean, well, here's an example where it is just giving you the geographical location, but if I was to go back and look at some of these maps that SolarWinds have set up, well, you've got a number of different maps listed here. I mean, you've got an SQL cluster map, you've got a storage map. If we were to click onto this, it's not just going to show me physical locations, it's actually showing me topology of my applications. If I go back again, there'll be a storage map as well listed here. So it really isn't just, okay, here's my campus, here's a node sitting in this building. It's actually looking at showing you all sorts of things, you know, how my storage is laid out, how my applications are laid out. Any object in SolarWinds, you know, you can place these on a map and represent them graphically. In fact, I tend not to even describe them really as maps. Whenever I'm working on a bit of consultancy with a customer and it comes to the mapping side of things, I don't tend to refer to them as maps. I just say graphical displays because you know, there's so much more you can do with them than just here's a node, it sits in our HQ.
Yeah. So, I mean, how technical does mapping get, Rob? I mean, I suppose right now with fewer people in offices these days, there might be other teams or other office admins that might be interested in seeing some of these maps. Do they always need to be technical?
No, absolutely not. I mean, to be honest, they're actually of most use to people who aren't necessarily in technical teams. Let's imagine that, you know, you've got some admin worker at the office, maybe the technical resource couldn't arrive, or there's no one else available in the area, or everyone's working from home. You know how it's been with COVID and everyone doing remote working. If you just got one person on site, let's say, and they've got to investigate an issue, it could be something as even as simple as looking at the aircon unit in one of your patch rooms or server rooms. You can make sure that this is visualized for them. You know, where do they need to go, or how does everything connect? You know, you don't need to display really complex information underneath your objects here, it could just be, okay, here's the physical location, here's the name of the device, here's a label that you'll see on it, or here's how these things connect together. There's a lot of things you can do for your non-technical team members. It's not just going to be really high-level stuff that only your senior engineers are going to be able to work with.
Sure. Okay.
So now that we've seen a bit of the map, well, a few of the maps that we've got in SolarWinds Orion Maps, I think what we'll do is have a bit of a blast from the past and go back to our Network Atlas and just do a quick comparison between the two, because I love this thing, but it's quite aged. No, it's time for it to fade away. So it's been deprecated. It'll be removed in the next release. I'm not going to say good riddance, but thank God we're not going to be using an executable anymore, an application that you need to run client side. That was a big turn off for people having to install this software on multiple different desktops they might be working on, or actually log on to the server to use it. That really turned people off.
So, wait, there's no client-side application now?
No, all gone, all through the Web Console, and thank God.
Cool. So we're not going to get any issues which perhaps some of the users we've got with us today in terms of connection failures or crashes. Are we going to see that's a thing of the past, is it?
That's right. Well, I can remember, multiple occasions while I was working with this tool. Occasionally you get an issue where connection was lost and you'd lose all your work on the map, or maybe it was taking a long time to load up. I mean, if I was just to exit out this application now and load back in, it would probably take a bit of time for it to come back up again. I've got to log in as well, which is another pain point. Whereas now, maps all online, I can just navigate to it as soon as I jump onto my web console. So now I've got to wait for it to connect, I've got to wait for it to load up my maps. It's all a bit fiddly. Whereas this new web-based mapping solution, look at how swift it is. I just go My Dashboards, Home, Orion Maps, and I'm there. I mean, it's such a big advantage, and probably, I can't see Network Atlas has popped up yet, and that's likely because it was still loading in the time that it took me to load up my new mapping resource. There you go, it's finally kicked in.
Much, bless it. It served the purpose back in the day, but we've got an improved one. Poor Network Atlas is getting a beating.
Yeah, I know. I do apologise to Network Atlas, but it's time to move on. And actually, I think from the poll we saw, there are a few people still not running the very latest, or maybe are one release behind. It really is time to update, because this solution is such a big improvement.
Cool.
So what I'd like to do now is actually take a look at the Orion Maps feature and try editing some of our maps, and actually show you, where the improvements were made. Because, we had Orion Maps in the last release, but let's say it was still in some proving ground state. It's still being developed. It wasn't quite there yet. People still were using Network Atlas because there were some features that were retained in that version but weren't in Orion Maps itself. But nowadays, everything's been ported over to the Web Console. So if I was to go onto my Orion demo and edit one of these maps, and yes, you can do this if you want to play around. It's one of those rare things in the SolarWinds Online demo that you can actually make changes to. You can see I've now got my map listed here in edit mode. You can see I can drag, select. I'm just going to clear this one out, I think. So let's place some objects on the canvas. Maybe a few of these. And in fact, I'm just going to stick a load of these on there, because I want to show you how messy it can be if you add everything in one, and then filter that down a bit and make it a bit more organized. Maybe I was a bit too ambitious there. Need to filter it down a bit more.
That was very brave, Rob.
I know, I should not. Oh, there you go. So even though I was really taxing it, putting the whole of the SolarWinds estate onto this map, it did render. So there you go. I've got this really disorganized map now. And that's deliberate, because what I want to show you is we finally got these quick tools to organize the map. Now, everyone remembers these from Network Atlas, you know, the different styles that you can apply to objects on your canvas. You know, we used to have these in Atlas, but they weren't in the last release of SolarWinds Online Orion Maps. But nowadays, you can restructure these based on those different styles. Let's try a few more. Nice star here. There you go, already looking prettier. Look at that. And let's try a grid as well. Really good starting point when looking at these maps, because before, I mean, you could put everything on there, but not as quick, let's say, as the old Network Atlas to organize these, because it was missing those hierarchy options. But nowadays, that's been put in. Really, really useful for clearing things down, making it a bit more structured and giving you a better starting point. So that's a big advantage here. Another thing I want to point out is connections. So you can see we've already got the connections mapped out between some nodes. If I just take some samples here, so you can see SolarWinds has automatically connected these. But what if I know there's some connection between two nodes and it's not been discovered, or maybe it's not being captured because, let's say, they're ICMP only devices, so we're not getting topology data. How can I actually connect these two together? In the old Network Atlas tool, it would be a simple matter of drawing a line between the two. In the 2019 release of the online Orion Maps, you couldn't connect objects together. But now, as I say, they've really bumped up the features in Orion Maps, the online version. So now I can actually draw a connection between these two. So you can see here, I've got this node here selected. I've got my 3500 selected here, and I can draw a quick topology connection between the two. What I need to provide is the interface on one side, the interface on another, and it's going to connect the two together. So I'll just choose two random interfaces. Hopefully there's an interface listed on this Nutanix. No, perhaps a different device then. So let's go with one I know has an interface. Maybe this device here. So if I was to just grab that, move it down. Cool, I've got them side by side. Select this, select that. Let's create a new topology connection. I'm going to choose an interface on this side. There you go, our gigabit interface. Choose one on our 7200. There we go. Create. Not available in online demo. Oh dear, SolarWinds, you've let me down. Suffice to say, you would get a new connection drawn out exactly like this one. So really, really neat feature that's come into play.
The key to it is how simple and clean that was, Rob, to be honest. I mean, obviously we can't, there's things we're limited to do with the online demo, obviously, but just seeing configuring it there is obviously much improved on the older versions we've seen.
Absolutely. I mean, and you mentioned pretty there, and pretty is the right word, because if I was to do the same thing in Atlas, it would just look a bit, let's say, clunky. It'd just be a static black line. If I demonstrate, I really want to emphasize here, guys, how essential it is you start using online maps. I mean, look at that compared to the very latest. This is a thing of beauty. I absolutely love the presentation here. Another thing that maybe wasn't so easy to do in the 2019 release of the Orion Maps is organize these on the map in terms of what sort of position they have relative to each other, these objects. What I can do now is select multiple different objects. You can see here I've got 3 objects selected over on this right pane here, and then I can start manipulating their size and position, their text style. You can see icon here as well. I'll come down to style in a moment, but let's focus on size and position first. You can see I've got coordinates now listed in my Orion maps. And this sort of bit was a big advantage in Network Atlas, that you could really get very precise in the location of the objects on your map, because you could manipulate their X and Y coordinates. So what I could do here is just say, okay, well, actually, I'm going to choose this one and my Azure websites. So this has a coordinate, set of coordinates of 1632, 768. Let's do the same thing here. 1632. There you go, nice and lined up now. So really, really quick way of just organizing these nodes relative to each other, making sure they have nice, precise locations on the map. I mentioned that I'd cover the text next. Let's select 4 of these objects here, drag them out a bit. What I'd like to do is change this this default text, because I mean it does the job, but I want to look at it a bit prettier. I'm just going to expand out this selection. I can change the font, I can change the color. What I'll do is make it nice, soothing blue, make it bold, maybe bump it up a bit. There you go, much, much better. You can see I've got other options as well, so I can change the positioning of it. So I can put it in the top instead, let's say. A really neat feature here that I can do is I can actually finally replace the text it's showing. This was another thing that was missing in the last release of Orion Maps. You've got to upgrade, guys, because this is an excellent way of changing the display of these maps. It's not just going to be the name of your devices. You can see here, okay, by default, I'm showing the display name of my nodes. But what if I wanted to show, let's say, some sort of custom property data? I want to show what site they're at. I want to show maybe what sort of device type they are. I want to show the vendor. All of that information can be inserted using these nice variables that you see here. I'm going to do a quick search, for example, for vendor. Select that. I'm going to insert that property. Now I've got not only my display name, I've also got the vendor. You can see this is a Linux device. You can see this is Cisco. Really, really neat. It's not just that sort of static string data, though, that you can insert there. You could write your own text. Let's say I want to call this vendor, put in my own text there, or maybe I want to insert some sort of, let's say, current statistic from the device. And that was another really neat thing about the maps in Network Atlas. You could insert data about what its response time was, what its CPU utilization was. I can do that now in its latest version. I'm going to put response time here. I'm going to insert another variable using that content. Look at this, average response time. Insert that here. There you go. Maybe I'll put a milliseconds description after that, so nice and clear what it's doing. There you go, and it's really starting to fill up now.
Rob, we've got a ton of questions coming in about maps, and I probably think too many to answer at the end. So I just wanted to run through a couple, if I might, right now very quickly with you. We've had a couple of questions coming in about importing maps from the existing Atlas tool. Do we know any more about whether that, is that possible to do now just for everybody? Or, are people going to lose their existing maps once Atlas is sort of out of the park completely?
So there's no direct import from the old Network Atlas maps, but I'm not going to say, it's not going to be useful for building up maps from here. In fact, something I want to recommend people do is just go through to their Atlas tool, maybe load up one of their more used or more familiar, or one of these maps that you actually want to keep. In our case, it could be this Prosperon map here. So I'll load that one up. And it's not like I'm going to lose all of this. I'm not going to be able to retain it or replicate it in this new format. What I can do is just load that up. I'm going to take a quick snapshot of this. There you go. I'm going to save that. Let's call it Prosperon. map, because I want to build up from this. I don't want to lose it. I do want to import it into the new tool. How am I going to do that? I'm just going to go back, load up my lab environment. Let's go over to the Orion Maps tool. Let's start fresh. Nice new map, new blank canvas. And something people are really going to appreciate here is the fact that you could insert images into these maps. So I'm just going to choose this option here at the top, insert an image. There's my Prosperon map. There we go. Excellent. So you're thinking, okay, well, that's just a static image. That's not going to give me the data that I need. Well, it's going to give you a path to adding this back in, adding this data back in. So I can choose, let's say, my core node. There you go. I can overlay that on here. I can put my NAS back on. Put that in the same position. In fact, what you're going to start noticing is, yeah, the connections are being drawn out. I can put my LAN controller back on as well. And let's say I don't want to add these all individually. Let's say I want to add it based on the fact that all of these exist at Worthing. That's where our office is based. What can I do to achieve that? Well, you've got this filter option over on the left. So I'm going to select my filter. I'm going to edit and add a new filter, because these default ones, while useful, they're not going to achieve what I want to demonstrate here. So I'm going to edit my filters, and now I'm going to search for something called city. It's a custom property of ours. Just going to select that. There we go. So now I can use this to actually populate my map. I'll just open up my city, custom property, select Worthing. That's where my site is. Apply that. Excellent. Okay, so that's not all our devices have been labeled with Worthing as a city, but that's a good start. I've got my dev here. I can drag that across. Point here, actually, guys, always remember to populate your custom property data, or you encounter things like that. In fact, what I could do is just double check that I've not got another property that would have Worthing. Let's use site perhaps. Let's see what we got. There we go. That's no Worthing. Okay. Definitely always populate your custom property data, guys. But you see where I'm going with this. So I could add these all individually, or I could filter by custom property data, choose my site. Let's say I know site is a very popular custom property, and then just dump everything all onto this canvas and start organizing. In fact, what I could do now is just clear out the filter that I applied. I want to see everything. I'm just going to drag all across. And I can start putting these in their rightful place. But I mean, this isn't going to be so necessary, to be honest, guys, because there's other intelligent mapping that you can use in SolarWinds. In fact, something I really wanted to show is how SolarWinds is going to automate that process to some extent. If I go back over to the SolarWinds online demo, I'm going to choose one of our core nodes for SolarWinds, one of our core switches, because that's going to be that's going to have a wealth of topology data on it. So if I go over here, over to my manage nodes, let's search for one of their cores. There you go. I know this is definitely going to have a lot of connections on it. So I'm selecting their core 3500. I've got a really neat mapping page on my node details. And this is by default on any node details page that's created. And go over to my map, and you can see that SolarWinds have automatically populated some topology data for the device. And you might think, okay, well, that's really neat. How can I use that? Because that's only showing up on my node details page. That's not a real map that's saved on my Orion Maps page. Well, what you can do is use Open Map in Editor. So SolarWinds have taken a real burden off your hands of creating something from scratch. They've done it for you. They've automatically mapped out these connections using its own intelligence, its own database that contains topology data, represented that visually, and you can take it forward. You can take that a step further. Let's open the mapping editor. Now let's imagine that this was designed to be a core map. You know, if I wanted to create a new core map, half my job is already done because I've got my core already shown up there. I didn't have to do a search. I didn't have to do any filtering. It was already displayed and ready for me. So now all I need to do is maybe adjust the text a bit like we did earlier, adjust the icon style. Let's do that quickly now. Look at that, really, really quick. Maybe for my core, I want this to look a bit different. So I'm just going to open up my icon. Look at this, by the way, guys, custom icons finally. I was really missing this.
We had a question come in about icons. I think Dan was busy blaspheming about Atlas, but did like the icons that are in there. So have the icons been improved in the newer version, or are they pretty much the same, Rob?
No, these have all been improved. So you notice this is a lot prettier than the old icon style that SolarWinds had in Orion Maps, in the Network Atlas tool before. And like I said, custom icons. So I know with the Network Atlas tool, it was always a bit of a arduous process to get custom icons added in, manage them effectively. You can do that really, really easy now from this GUI. I'm just going to manipulate that icon style a bit more. So let's say bump that up in size, maybe turn that to 75. Look at this, lovely.
There's a follow-up question from Dan, Rob, in terms of do the interfaces need to be enabled in order to monitor them? I guess that's a yes, isn't it?
Yes, that's right. You can capture the topology data in SolarWinds using SNMP, but for these connections to be mapped out, you do actually need to have these interfaces monitored. So make sure that you know, when you're adding your cores, when you're adding a distribution layer, even your access layer, that you start monitoring those interfaces that are actually going to represent the connections.
What about backgrounds, Rob? In terms of people that want to put backgrounds onto maps, I think this is something Paul asked us via the questions. Is that something that we've already covered, or is that something we can do with the new version?
That is absolutely something we can do. What I'll do is I'll deselect my objects here. I'm looking at a blank white background here. I could insert an image, but what I like to do is actually fill up the whole page with something, you know, a bit more stylish, let's say. Now that I've got no object selected, it's given me some map properties over on the right. I could change the color palette here, or I can change the background. So you can see I've currently got no color selected, it's all transparent. What if I wanted to change it to a nice soothing blue here, and maybe go with some white text to match that? So there we go, I've got all my icons selected, all my labels selected. Let's go with bold, increase the size a bit, let's put that at 16. What color should I use? White. There we go. Look at that, nice soothing background now. Much better than a blank white canvas, I feel. And images as well, of course, can be used. So if I was to go over here, image, you can use from a library already that comes boxed up with the application, or you can browse and use your own custom backgrounds. In fact, if I wanted to, I could even use my Prosperon map as a background. Not that I recommend it, but if you have something like a screenshot from Google Maps or whatever satellite image that you like to use to represent your campus, you can use that too.
Going back in terms of, we've got a question from Stephen, which I missed much earlier. He's asking, can the new maps display a numeric value from a SAM monitor, server application monitor, such as a custom PowerShell? Rob, is that something you can answer now, or should we take that away? you want me to repeat it?
With these new variables here, essentially any data that's associated with that object can be represented. So if I was to choose, let's say, an application from my list, just going to load up my application objects here, because at the moment I've just got my node selected. Let's go with, let's say, Apache. At the moment, it's still display name, so still the name of the application that's showing up. Let's add some content to it. Status is going to be a useful one, but as for the result of a PowerShell script, not currently there at the moment, but I'm sure something that's going to be added in.
Stephen, we'll ask that question internally, and we'll come back to you. Yeah, if it can be done, we'll find a way, obviously. But we'll leave that one with us. We'll come back. Rob, I'm just conscious of the time. Got a couple of minutes left, and I know we've had some really good questions coming in so far, which is nice to do them as we go. But is there anything left that you still would want to show the guys before we start to finish up?
No, I think we can go back to the questions. That's fine. I think I've demonstrated, majority of what I wanted to cover, but you know how time gets away from us.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, everyone, thanks for those questions. Ones that we haven't answered, we will make sure that we do come back to you on. There has been a few, but we'll endeavour to get those resolved and fired back to you as quickly as we can. Rob, can you? That's it. Perfect stuff. So, very quickly, guys, if I can, hopefully you're seeing my screen back. Yeah, we've got one last poll, which is a little bit out of the box, but one that we would be grateful for your feedback on. Essentially, this is a question for us in terms of how much time, and we've seen obviously some of you are still a little bit behind on mapping, still a little bit behind on versions, but we're just interested to know today in terms of how much time you get to spend on developing that particular your own Orion platforms, to give us a sort of understanding in terms of what other time and what other pressures and other projects you have going on that sometimes can get in the way. So thank you very much for answering some of those. We're seeing the majority, Rob, you're seeing it too, is the middle one. We get that, we're seeing that, just about enough time to do the important things. So that's nice feedback. We are internally discussing other services here which can offer, by way of sort of managed services, in terms of taking some of those daily headaches away from yourselves. So it could be that with some of you we reach out and get a little bit more sort of fact finding on that. But we were just curious to see, and the versions that you're on gives us a clue to that as well, obviously. Just to see how much time you are able to spend in terms of improving that platform. So, hey, listen, thank you very much for responding to that one. That's really, really kind of you. So we've got, obviously, we're running out of time for any more questions, and we did answer a whole heap for one, and there's still some more that we can get back, and we'll make sure that we do that for you. Just wanted to thank Rob very much for that demo. Rob, thank you. That's fantastic.
Thanks, Rob.
And everybody that attended, wishing you well, obviously, and thank you very much for coming on board. Just a quick mention before we sign out, on the 10th of September is where we do a little bit more of a deep dive into those dashboard screens. There's two areas which we see a lot of feedback from people that need to make improvements. One is on the mapping, and the second was on the dashboards to give that better visual. So please, we'll be sending out emails, obviously, relatively quickly about getting you guys signed up for that one. 10th of September, make a note of it now. But of course, we're going to be sending out invites to you. So listen, have a great day. Thank you very much for coming and joining us today. I hope you got some stuff out of it. Rob and I are going to head off now into the sun, holding hands. No, not really. We're going to spend the rest of our time probably today talking about Network Atlas and how much we absolutely hated it. All right. Thank you very much, guys. Talk to you all soon.
Thanks all.